So it's been 2 years. In that 2 years, what have been the big games you've played and have enjoyed?
Oh, the okay, for me, okay, probably the biggest one is the Outer Wilds, which I think is my new favorite game ever.
Really?
Yeah, have you ever played it?
No, I haven't.
You have to play it. Everyone has to
Um,
play it, or at least try it. Um, it's really hard to talk about without spoiling. But basically, it's a mystery that you unravel piece by piece, and each piece that you discover leads to like a connection of all these other loose pieces that you had going in your head. And it's that information game thing where putting all these pieces together is really rewarding. Um, it's basically what happens is you've got a whole bunch of loose pieces of information around in your head, and you're not sure how they're connected and stuff, and you get one more, and it kind of starts like a combo chain or something. Like this one connects to that one, and now because I know the connection between these two things, I also know I can figure out that this third thing is also related because blah blah blah, and it's like the calculating meme or the mind. It's really good just for that reason, but because of that, it's really hard to talk about.
no, that's pretty awesome. I know. I believe you made a video on it a
I
while ago,
I did
right?
make a video on it. Like it's a game I wanted to make a video about, but I didn't want to spoil. So I had to pick a narrow section of something I liked, and it wasn't the best topic in the world, but it was alright.
Well, I remember liking it, and I remember very vividly. I remember the was it a comet with the ice,
Oh,
and
you
you have
should,
to get to the middle of it.
yeah. It's it's a good game anyway. So if you like, I don't know, like Her Story or games like that, you like, and if you like space exploration, then you'll like the Outer Wilds, and you like sciencey kind of
Her
stuff.
her story was great. I played that a couple of years ago. Did you play that when that came out?
Yeah, I also played Telling Lies, but I didn't get into that one as much.
I've heard that from a few people. I have not played Telling Lies yet.
Yeah, I feel like
Did you ever?
Telling Lies had less of those moments of me piecing everything together,
Hmm.
and more of me just following the thread I was given. But maybe I'm just not. I didn't make the connections myself this time. I don't know why.
That's interesting. So what is Telling Lies? Is that pretty much the exact? So I haven't played it yet. I've essentially seen it on the Steam store. I've seen screenshots of it. Is it
It's
pretty much her story, but with a cast of characters instead of just one?
yes. It does have an interesting story. Like I thought it actually the story was interesting. It's just the player me figuring things out didn't happen as much. But the story is actually much more interesting than her story. One of the interesting things I think is maybe that her story is a little bit cliched and a simple story, and maybe if you saw like if they made a movie of her story, it wouldn't be so interesting. But because it's so cliched and not so great, or not so original, I can figure it out because I'm not even if I'm not super intelligent, I can figure it out. Like, oh, it must be this, and it is this, because it's
Yeah.
cliched. Whereas Telling Lies maybe was a much more well written and interesting story that I couldn't figure out by myself, maybe, and that's why I didn't like it as much. It's kind of ironic that way.
So do you think, or maybe this is what you're trying to get at? Do you think Telling Lies is maybe a bit less intuitive because the story of it is a bit more, a little bit more creative and sophisticated?
Perhaps, yeah. I mean, I'd need to do a full, playthrough and analysis of it. As it is, I played it through and kind of rushed towards the ending and got a bad-ish ending, I guess. And I didn't go back to it. So I think I played it for the minimum amount of time that it's possible to finish it or something like that. So yeah.
So does Telling Lies actually have like because from what I remember, her story doesn't really have an ending as much as it. Unless I'm wrong, doesn't it just kind of at a certain point you're just looking at the same footage over and over again, and you
At
either put together.
It does have an ending. Like at a certain point, when you've watched a percentage of all the key videos that really tell the
Oh
story,
yeah, you're right. You're right.
it comes up with a prompt saying, like you get a text message or something saying, "So I'm still waiting outside. Are you ready to go?" or something like that. Which
Yeah, you're
basically
right.
is the game telling the player, you've gotten everything. You can, if you really want to find little tiny things that are not important, you can keep going. But you've done it now. So, and
That's
yeah,
triggered by a certain percentage.
I think I think it's triggered by you having watched all the key videos that tell what happened in the story, and the key videos that mean you've figured it out. So I mean, it's a bit
I remember that
ambiguous, but yeah.
happening. I remember that happening now, but maybe it's just because I'm not too bright. But I remember getting to that point and still not really understanding what actually happened, and going back and still playing it for probably an hour or two more before
Well,
things started finally clicking.
well, I am also not bright, but I think that I think I just read. Oh, this is the game telling me that you're done. But it hasn't. It's not that you're not bright. It has it. You probably figured like couple of different theories out, but the game doesn't tell you which one's correct. It's up to you to
Mm,
decide your
mm.
own ending kind of thing. So that's probably why a lot of people complained about that actually. That it
Um,
wasn't here's the what actually happened thing. But yeah.
um, but I like that sense. For me, I enjoyed that you kind of eventually got to a place where you feel like you've either proved or disproved your like that never felt like the ending to me. That just felt like something that kind of happened. And then now that I'm thinking about it, I do think they play like the credits after it. Like it's obviously could be wrong, but it's like I think it's obviously meant to be an ending, but that never felt like the ending to me because I spent so much more time still trying to figure out what actually happened, and the ending ends up being something that's just decided on by the player
Yeah.
because
I
at a
think I
certain point you've just figured out the story and
I think I may have
you're done.
sorry, I think I may have read somewhere that the ending was ambiguous, so I was kind of expecting that, and maybe that
Hmm.
actually helped. But yeah. But anyways, that's so I really recommend the Outer Wilds. What about you? What's your big game of the last 2 years?
Oh, a game I really enjoyed. Um, it was very divisive, and I understand why, but I really enjoyed Death Stranding when that came out. I think it was earlier this year. No, it was the end of 2019. It came out in November, I think.
So as
But
someone
I
who
really,
hasn't played it and is not that into it, especially not into Kojima,
mhm.
how would you sell it to me? Like, why should I play it?
If you don't enjoy or at least can stomach Hideo Kojima,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's probably not going to be. I have a hard time thinking anyone who hasn't enjoyed his work up till now would ever really enjoy that game. I think what it's tough. And I haven't really thought about it in great detail about what I liked so much about it. I liked how I think, and this has been said by other people, but it's definitely true. I think you don't get a game with that budget that does what it does without a name like his attached. Like I can't think of any
Yeah,
other game with such production values that is essentially a the has the mechanics and story of more of like an independent level video game.
yeah. It's kind of like giving David Lynch the keys to a AAA blockbuster Marvel movie or something.
Yeah, absolutely like that, and it's just so different than the other games that like release on that level. It's definitely not perfect. I know the shooting mechanics, which sometimes you have to. But what's interesting about it is they have this entire like it's this third person shooting mode essentially where you bring out your weapons, but I don't remember using that more than once or twice. Um,
Yeah, I think of all the stuff I've seen about the game, I didn't even know it had guns in it.
it does, but you can get through almost the entire game. Someone will, of course, in the I'm sure someone out there probably has a better memory than I do, but I'm pretty sure you can get through the entire game aside from maybe the boss fights without having to really indulge in combat. Um,
It has boss
and
fights.
and yeah, there are boss fights,
I guess it still is a
which
video game.
which is the boss fights are probably my least favorite thing about it, especially given like I don't know how familiar you are with Metal Gear Solid series, but there's definitely a lot of really unique boss fights um, throughout that, especially and I'm horrible with remembering names, but the sniper fight in Metal Gear Solid 3, which you can actually go in and speed up your in-game your system's clock, and you can actually just wait him out. Like he'll die of natural causes because you just waited so long on the same fight.
That's cheating.
And
Aren't you supposed to leave your PlayStation on for a few years or something?
I don't think it's a few years. I could be wrong. I actually never did that. I always played that fight legitimately because I always felt like it was kind of cheating. But I know you can do it, and I know there's like everyone knows the Psycho Mantis fight in Metal Gear Solid 1 where you have to take your controller out, put it in port 2,
Mm.
and how he reads your game saves and all of that.
That's like
And
the
so
only Kojima game I played. I remember them telling me something like, "If you use auto fire, we'll know." And I'm like, "What? The game's talking to me. This is weird." It's like had this like what was it? What's that movie? Never Ending Story moment.
yeah,
Yeah. And it's
well,
sorry.
it's just such an unexpected fourth wall break because
Yeah.
it's the same thing with the end of Metal Gear Solid 2, which is um, one of my favorite video game endings. And if you like that ending, I think you'll find things in Death Stranding you can appreciate. But you have all the really classic boss fights throughout the Metal Gear Solid series, and Death Stranding really doesn't have any of that, and
Mm.
that was something I was let down by. But the story is crazy Kojima nonsense, but it has a beginning, a middle, and end, which is something that obviously Metal Gear Solid 5 didn't have, but it's also something that I think, aside from 1 and 3, a lot of those games struggled with, and so it was kind of refreshing to me to get back into a Kojima game that had a definite beginning, middle, end, and also didn't have the weight of an entire franchise to deal with. Like one of the issues with Metal Gear Solid 4 is it has all of this like weight of like 20-25 years worth of video game backstory and lore to contend with, and it was nice to see Kojima finally make something that wasn't part of that
Mm.
series to me. But a lot of people will not enjoy that game, and I was not surprised at all by its kind of controversial reception.
Can you, as a player, can you affect the story, or is it something that it's a story that Kojima wants to tell that you experience, or is it a story that you co-write, or
No, you don't. There's no. It's classic cutscene after cutscene at times.
oh. That's always, I think that's one of the biggest reasons why I haven't really gotten into Kojima stuff
Mm-hmm.
before, or even when kind of why I drifted away from Japanese RPGs as well, I guess. But how about Persona 5? Like, you just made your video on that, which is really cool. And you talked about how you did sacrifice things to make, this game and your relationships your own, and how you can decide who's your friend. Is that something that kind of you think breaks away from the traditional Japanese story, Japanese game idea of the stories told to you rather than with you?
Well, it's interesting. I think Persona is set up in such a way that the story is the story, and there's these very specific beats and dates that you need to complete things by so that the story can continue. Where things change, is what you do and what you choose to do day by day. And so, like, it definitely has the same like basic layout as a JRPG. It's hard to explain the the mechanics are easy to explain in a way, but it's also hard to kind of really illustrate how the story is co-authored and not at the same time, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
Like you choose who to hang out with, you choose which characters you get closer to, but at the end of the day, the ending is the ending. Now there's a good bad and there's a good okay and bad ending, but those are dependent on essentially a few different cutscenes and answering them correctly. Or in the newer game, you have to actually get close to a few select characters in order to see the good ending. But the ending, like the cutscenes themselves, the story is the story.
Hmm. But I guess you kind of the person. Would you say the personal story is yours, but the plot story is the game's?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think also you get, it's almost like you get to choose, um, you get to customize it in some ways. Like, you get to, it's almost like, you get to decide on you don't get to decide or change the A story, but the subplots and the B story and the C story and the character moments are much more um, unique and dependent on player interaction.
So if it's like the hospital drama, the patients and the outcomes of the patients are predetermined, but the if um, Doctor Sally and Nurse Rogers are going to fall in love is up to you.
Hmm. Yeah, and perfect example is like there's so many. Like you can go through that game and there are characters that are incidental to the plot, to the main plot, that you could go through the entire game and never meet. Um, and you could spend like every day after school or after dungeon crawling, you could spend every day just studying or going to the arcade or what have you, and not spend time with anyone if you wanted.
I don't know. I don't know why I like the idea of that so much. Like this game's got characters you could never meet, and I think, oh, that sounds so cool, and it doesn't make any sense. But I guess it means that the game is larger than it appears, or
Well,
some.
there's you have your characters that are part of your main party, right? And you have characters that are important to the plot.
Mm.
But there are all these side characters. Like there's a fortune teller in one of the side areas again, and you can walk past her and all this. If you talk to her, she'll become one of your confidants, and you'll be able to increase your relationship with her, which will let you. It unlocks a few like really cool abilities, and it also will let you summon personas from her arcana and summon personas from that arcana of a little bit more strength. Um, but if you just continue to walk past her anytime you're in that area and never talk to her for the entirety of the game, you'll never meet that person. Um,
Sounds
there's
like
also
life,
one,
man. It's heavy.
yeah. There's a scene early on too when you go to a fake gun shop or a model gun shop, and the owner there you interact with, and there's this quick like scene or two with him. But in order to talk to him again, you have to raise one of your social stats, courage, pretty significantly. I think you have to get to rank 3 or 4 to talk to him. And at the time you're introduced to that character, your courage is rank 1, or I don't even think it's possible to be rank 2 yet, because it's so early on in the game. But later on in the game, like we're talking like tens of hours maybe, um, and you get your courage up, you can actually go back to that character and unlock his confidant and actually have a relationship with that character. But if you forget to do that, or maybe you play through the entire game and your courage is just never high enough, or it's high enough too late, you never get that story. You never get to experience what that relationship ends up being like.
Mm.
And so if a regular person kind of plays the game and goes through it like that, I don't think um, they end up coming away with like a very unique and tailor-made like B story, like the actual character work is.
That sounds cool. So what are we going to talk about next? I guess.
When we talk about what are you making? You got any videos you're working on? I know you just came out with the shmups video, which was great.
Oh, thanks.
Um, It was really, I think it was actually one of your better ones.
Oh, thank you.
Um, not that all your videos are
No,
pretty good.
people like one's different amounts. It's okay. They're not children. You're allowed to love them differently.
Um,
But no,
well,
it's
I like the ones you do on. I think one of the strongest parts of your channel is I like it when you play games that I would never or have never really dabbled with. Like I've never really played a shmup
well, they're cool.
extensively. So
They're cool. They do take a lot of like they don't. They ask a like you have they at first glance like I played shmups 10 years ago, 15 years ago, like little bits, and thought, these games are bullcrap. They're too hard. They're terrible. Not terrible. I liked them, but I thought, they just want my money, and so I'm not going to play them. And it wasn't until I found one which kind of teaches you a little bit more that I got into them. But
which one was that?
there's Escaluda.
Hmm.
It's the one with the flying butterfly people. It has I don't know, maybe I just like that game more. And so I wanted to get good at it. And so I had to learn all these things. And that's what got me into the genre. But I do think that this one especially has a few things which help you as a new player. Like, even though it's hard, I've never finished the game yet. I played it today and died in the last boss again. But it has a bullet time feature, basically, which lets you slow down all the bullets, and it costs resources. But unlike other games, tend to use bombs, where I'm in trouble, and you push the bomb button, and it clears the screen of all the bullets and gets you out of jail. But you never actually that. But doing that doesn't teach you how to dodge what you couldn't dodge. Whereas slow down, like if you when you hit the panic button, slow down, this is too hard, I can't dodge it. You hit the button, it slows time down, and then you can see how you can dodge it, and you can do it in slow motion. And if you do that enough times, you learn to dodge it at full speed. So it teaches you how to get better at the game. Whereas other ones with bombs, they just say, yeah, this part's too hard for you, don't worry, we'll just skip it. And you never learn how to get good at it. So that's what I recommend for if you want to get into shmups, but probably don't
it's
get
kind
into
of cool too, because probably not.
Yeah, it's a dead genre anyway, so
Plenty of
if you like digging up the graves of the dead, so. But I really like them.
Well, it sounds also like the slowing down of time is much more interactive too than just like sending off a bomb and moving on to the next fight or next string of enemies.
Yeah.
Are there any videos that you're working on currently?
I've got a couple of ideas, but nothing I'm working on right now. I'm not sure if I'm going to take a break or... I'm in quarantine, so I probably will make another video, but I was thinking about doing some other projects, maybe not videos for a while. Yeah. Like, I go through phases.
What other projects do you work on?
I'm thinking of making a game. I don't know how to program or anything. I made one little game before, just to learn how to program. And the game I want to make... yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I constantly go through that cycle too, where I kind of want to experiment with game making, and then and it's just so tough to find the time. Well, it's fun. It's tough to find the time to do anything, but it's tough. I think it's really tough for me to find the time to sit down and really put that together. But what's the game you're thinking of making?
It's a shmup, actually. It's a pretty good genre for beginners to get into because there's lots of stuff you don't have to worry about. But it's got a few gimmicks, I guess, that make it a bit different. But it's something I might try and do. Yeah. I guess everyone's got their dream game. What game are you going to make?
The dream game I always had, which would not be the game I would make, But the game I always dreamed of making was like a JRPG, um, like horror game um, mix. Like growing up, I have these really fond memories of like me being a teenager and reading all the creepy pasta out there, like the Majora's Mask creepy pasta. I don't know if you're familiar with any of that.
I do not. I know Majora's
Um,
Mask. I don't know the creepypasta Majora's Mask.
anyway, it's all these like haunted, all these like internet stories about haunted game cartridges and that sort of thing. And it was going to be kind of a homage to that,
Hmm.
where you have a haunted game cartridge and you're stuck in like a haunted mansion or something, um, and you have to use the game cartridge to unlock doors in the real world, and vice versa. So if you find like a key to a door in the haunted game cartridge of the JRPG, you would unlock a door in the real world, and you would kind of make progress in one, have to go back to the other, and the two worlds would have generally the same layout and
That sounds.
same.
Sorry, that sounds pretty cool. Like the whole what was it? The Zelda. We had Light World and Dark World, and they affected each other.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it would be exactly like that. Like, the real world would be more of a I don't know if it would be like Resident Evil, but like kind of survival horror mechanics, and the JRPG world would be a um, light JRPG mechanics with a party and that sort.
It'd probably be really good too to have your safe space and then the tension space.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that'd be good for contrast and uh, yeah, maybe some people never want to leave the safe space. I don't know.
But it's tough. It's also tough as I have a very limited set of talents. Like I'm not a good um, artist. I have no like actual um, like visual design sense outside of like video editing.
Well, if
And
you know, they say good artists borrow and great artists steal video and make it their own, right? So,
right. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I write a lot. That's usually my hobby outside of. That's what I've been doing for the last few years is just writing.
oh, you do tell, or at least give us some links or something.
Oh
If
no,
you,
it's none of it's like public or worth showing anyone.
you,
But I've always go ahead.
no, I was gonna say it's not embarrassing fan fiction or anything, is it? That way you don't want to tell us.
It's yeah, it's Twilight fan fiction. It's my passion, and yeah.
Is that, oh, so you wrote what was it, the Twilight fanfic that became the big,
Oh, 50 Shades of
yeah,
Grey.
that was you, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was me.
Yeah, I knew it.
You caught me. But it's tough, just even having one or two hobbies like that, and also balancing it with, family and work, commutes, and just adult life.
Yeah. So how about you? Are you going to work on another video, and apart from writing, or you did you did show me one script just to get behind the scenes here. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, but
Oh yeah, yeah, of course.
are you going to
I don't know
be?
if I'll ever, I don't know if I'll ever make that video. I think the video I really want to make right now is uh how did you ever see that video I made years ago about jumping?
Yeah, I've seen all of them. What was the name of this series? Mechanically speaking.
Yeah. Um well, I stopped doing this because there was so much work, but I kind of want to get back into doing something like that, but doing it over a series of videos
Mm-hmm.
instead of just one. And so if I make another video, it's going to be like that. I've been really curious about finding out how equipment works in games, like how it works from a behind the scenes sense, and also how it works in just a higher level design sense. And so I think that's going to be my next video. I've
Mm.
been doing a lot of research and playing a lot of old CRPGs from like the 80s. And
Mm.
what's really interesting about going back in time and looking at games from that long ago is they're so um, simple's probably not the right word, but they're so pared down. Like the mechanics are so sparse that you can really um, isolate them and really look at what's going on behind the scenes and actually like really get into it.
Can you give us
Whereas
an example?
RPGs, yeah, of course, like the first CRPGs when you attack, they're just D&D dice roll, or
Mm.
they're at least meant to be when they're not glitchy. Like the computer is really just rolling a six-sided die. And nowadays, you look at popular RPGs and there's systems on top of systems on top of systems. Like I've been playing a lot of World of Warcraft, and um, when you equip a weapon in World of Warcraft, it affects all of your stats. It will, changes how what all of your spells and how much damage they do. Every weapon has a set of attributes, improving all of your dozen or so statistics and all of that stuff. But in old computer RPGs, weapons just do damage, and that's all they do. Um, and so it's just interesting being able to look at a game and really see and see the full picture like that because of how little there is to it. Probably doing a bad job of explaining this, but I guess one way to kind of illustrate this is if you look at RPGs that were released throughout the 1980s, going from like Ultima to was it like Dungeon Master near 87, I think. And you look at all those games, and in the very beginning, you have very simple mechanics. Like the first Ultima game, I think weapons just do static damage. Where like if you have a sword and it does 5 damage, it does 5 damage every time. And then as you get closer to the end, especially with especially with like Japanese RPGs near the end of the 80s, like Final Fantasy and um, Dragon Quest, and what was the third one? Fantasy Star, I think. Those are the big three. But you start seeing more and more like just the act of attacking with a sword becomes a much more complicated endeavor by the end of those 10 years. And that's interesting. It's also interesting seeing the different ways of calculating damage, like the difference between um, rolling a two four-sided dice versus randomly generating a number between 1 and 8 is a different way of calculating damage, and watching game designers kind of figure that out over that 10-year period is really interesting.
Mm. So, is it a chore playing these old games, or are you genuinely enjoying them?
Um,
Are they games that you
some of them,
played in the past, or are you playing them new, like for the first time now?
most of them I'm playing for the first time. I played Ultima 4 years ago. I played, though I don't know if I would really describe it as I played it. Played the first Final Fantasy. I played, the first like Legend of Zelda, um, which I would include kind of in that same legacy of us figuring out how RPGs and adventures are supposed to work in video games. I definitely wouldn't recommend anyone going back and playing them, unfortunately, unless you really have a purchase. I think it's interesting is just seeing those mechanics evolve and looking at them through the lens of where we are today.
Hmm. So maybe you don't want to spoil the video and stuff yet, but when you mean equipment, like you said, it's specifically equipment, you mean like swords and potions and
Yeah,
gear?
and armor. Yeah, I don't know if it's a good idea. I mean, it might like appeal to like two people,
No, it sounds
but I
interesting.
find it interesting.
I'm wondering where
Well,
you
some people,
draw the line between like gear and like magic effects and stuff like that.
well, it's all tough. I think you draw the line
Mm. Like, isn't a
because
spell just another inventory item, or things like that?
well, it depends on the game. Some
Yeah.
games will treat them like equipment, and other games will treat them as something that you'll uh, treat them as something you learn,
Mm,
obviously. And then there are some games that aren't I don't think it's as frequent today, but there are some games where they are essentially just like one-time use items.
yeah. So, speaking of going back and playing old games, have you ever gone back and played a game that you missed originally and you actually would recommend it, or you actually did get into it? Because I find it really hard to do that, but I guess there are a couple of games where I have actually gotten into an old game and actually liked it, but it's rare.
Um, yeah, it's really rare. That's a good question. Um, Earthbound, maybe,
I,
but I don't even know if I would.
I think I played it for like 20 seconds and it didn't hold it for me, but I didn't give it a chance, proper one.
But it's tough, and usually when I'm going back and playing those older games, it's more out of curiosity than it is actually trying to play them for the sake of play. Like it's not the same. Like you sit down and play a newer game, and you sit down usually with the goal of just having fun with it.
Yeah.
And I think with older games, it's more of a curiosity thing. How about you?
Symphony of the Night is a game I missed, and I mean these are games that I didn't miss the window by like decades. I don't know when Symphony of the Night came out, but it's a PlayStation One game, and I don't think I played it until PlayStation Three era. But
Pull a number. I want to say
Castlevania,
96.
yeah. But I really like that, and it's weird because I never really gotten into any.
97.
Yeah, I really like that, and it's weird because I never really got into the Metroid games.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know, maybe it's just something about the theme of Castlevania appealed to me more. But I really dug that, and I think that still holds up. I think you can still play that now, and if you like Metroidvanias, you will like that game. Um, and then I went back and not back. Then I went forward and played all the DS Castlevanias and really enjoyed those. And it's a bit of a weird one, but even I missed Baldur's Gate 2 the first time, and all the Infinity Engine games. I missed all of them. I was really into Neverwinter Nights after that had come out, and then I think it was sometime after Neverwinter Nights 2 came out, and it wasn't really great. I decided to go back and play Baldur's Gate 2, and it ended up becoming one of my favourite games ever, even despite how clunky it is. Um, yeah, so I guess Baldur's Gate 2 and and Symphony of the Night are the two that did hold up for a new player going back and trying them again. For me, anyway.
Symphony of the Night is a really good example. I remember playing that in the PS3 era and really enjoying it.
I guess once you get back to
Um,
80s, though, it's quite hard to find anything that doesn't feel unbelievably uh,
the
clunky.
closest you come, in my opinion, to of all those like 80s computer RPGs, I think the easiest ones to get into are there's was it Pools of Radiance? Is that the name? It's the
Oh, yeah.
first
The first
D and
person
D
ish
game.
ones where you. That's the one where you.
Almost most of them are first person, I
Yeah.
think. Pools of Radiance was the first, or Pool of Radiance, excuse me, was the first Dungeons and Dragons straight adaptation, and that was '88. And the first Final Fantasy isn't too hard to get into, and of course there's Legend of Zelda, which is still pretty playable today. But even those games, I can see being a turnoff for so many people.
Yeah.
Um,
I did after. We didn't get a Final Fantasy in Australia until Final Fantasy VII. That was the first one we got. Um, and after that, playing that, and after playing 8 and 9, I think I did go back and played 4 because it came out on Game Boy SP, Game Boy Advance. And I really liked that one. And I must have tried about 12, 13 times to get into Final Fantasy 6, which is everyone's secret best,
mhm.
not secret, which is everyone's favorite Final Fantasy game. And I've played the opening, maybe opening hour like 12 times, yeah. But it hasn't
It's
sunk in.
as good.
But I played
Um,
4 all the way through. I think maybe it's just
four is
on.
good.
Yeah.
I'm a sucker for seven.
So you played the remake, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
give us your rundown on the remake. Haven't played it. I'm interested. It's like might be the. Hang on, I did play a JRPG not recently. Anyways, 7 might is tempting me to try to get back into JRPGs again. So tell me about
Uh,
7.
it's good. It's tough to talk about my feelings on it in depth because um, a lot of them are plot details. I really don't want to get it too much into spoilers.
It has spoilers, like it's not just a recreation.
I guess that in and of itself is a spoiler.
Oh, you've ruined it for me
Yeah,
now.
it does.
I'm hanging up.
Yeah, it does. It makes some pretty. It does kind of pull away from the original story a bit, which I'll let you find out on your own.
If I play it, I
Um,
mean, is it out
if
on
you play
Is it
it,
coming out
yeah,
on PC?
probably.
Yeah.
I can't imagine it not in like a year or
Yeah.
so. They have a year exclusivity with
Mm,
PlayStation.
okay.
Um, do you have a Switch?
I have nothing. I have a PC and that's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you can probably get for emulation. A really good JRPG is the first Xenoblade Chronicles is one of my favorites,
Mm.
and you can get that on emulation for on like Dolphin because it was on the Wii,
Mm.
and they're re-releasing it for the Switch in I think a month or two, or at least that's what the release was. I don't know if they've postponed it because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
But that's a really great game. That and Persona 5 are probably my two favorite JRPGs that have been released in the past,
I think
call it 10 years.
I think I would have tried Persona 5 after watching your video if you hadn't specifically said it takes 8 hours to get going in the beginning.
Yeah, it's a long game and it is not for Persona. My biggest complaint about Persona 5 is that it is does not really it's not for impatient people and it doesn't always respect your time. Um,
Yeah.
it's fine if you're okay with that, which obviously I'm
I'm
good with it.
kind of not like I've in recent years I've really been gravitating towards games that can be played in short bursts, and I think maybe
Hmm.
that's why I got into shmups finally. It's because I could play a shmup for 5-10 minutes and that's enough. And I find myself with lots of little gaps like I can feel. But the kind of game that I like, this is why I should definitely not get VR. The kind of game where I get absorbed in it and I can't jump away from it if somebody in the house needs me is becoming less and less of a thing in my house. Those games I can only play at night and I do play games at night, but when I play games when I play games later at night, I'm tired and I'm not willing to I don't want to get into something longer and serious either at
Hmm.
that time. So it's like the only time I do have, which is a decent length, and I can get completely absorbed. But to do that, I have to be playing a game that I'm already into. It's hard to
Hmm.
decide to like, okay, I'm going to go get into this big thing at that time. So
Yeah, it's tough. Well, it's tough to make that and as you get older, I think games looking more and more like every game you get is like another commitment almost. And it's what stops. I've heard really good things about the newest Assassin's Creed game, which is called Odyssey, I think.
mm,
I've heard it's really good, but I've also heard that it doesn't do anything too new. Like it doesn't have anything too like it's a good RPG, it's a good action adventure game. It also takes like 60 or 70 hours to complete, and it's just I don't know if I want to deal with all of that. I think I'm good.
yeah, it does look interesting. I mean, I think I might get it just for the bird flying around, the historical settings. Looks like
Hmm.
fun. I heard they had like an education edition or something like that, where you can just
Yeah, I think they've done that
yeah,
for the last two games because
mm,
before that it was Origin, I think, which
mm,
is the Egypt one, maybe.
yeah,
I'm always afraid. I'm always like deathly afraid of being incorrect when we do these podcasts.
Oh, don't
I
worry,
don't
no
know
one
why,
listens.
but
Like
no
we
one
could.
listens. We started with maybe 50 people, and by this time it's 10 or so,
Mhm.
and 8 of them are just empty chairs
Yeah.
who like went
A
to the
couple of them
bathroom.
put it on and then fell asleep. One of them's probably
Yeah,
driving, so
exactly.
wake up, dude.
Yep. Yeah, don't listen to this in your car because well,
It's a
you might
snooze
pass
fest,
out.
yeah. Yeah.
But I always I enjoy catching up like this. It's nice.
Yeah.
We should do this more often,
Yeah, it's good,
even if
even if
no
we
one
don't
listens.
publish it, yeah.
Um, but yeah, I've been working. I've been working on that gear video to circle back.
Hmm. It sounds like it
That's
sounds
where we're
really
at.
interesting. It does sound like a lot of work though.
Well, that's why I wanted to break it out into parts
Yeah.
because, like, so the first planned video anyway, is going to focus entirely on that decade of 1980 and 1990.
So you're breaking it
And
down into just complete decades. That still sounds like a lot of work.
well, I think after this first one, I'm
Mm.
going to break it down into either single games or series, um,
Mm. One thing
because
I
like
sorry.
it's just way too much work to try to just get. It would be hours long to get all your thoughts into like one video.
Mm. One thing I have found is that working on older games or less visually exciting games is that it's hard to make them look good in hard to do interesting things in video or you can often you can do more interesting things with them but it takes more time like when I make a
Hmm.
video about Destiny it's like super easy to make it look good and look nice and it
Hmm.
takes less time to plan and make. But when I make a video about like the Red Strings Club, which is like a completely static game, it takes more time to make something that looks less visually interesting. Or older games too, like Baldur's Gate 2 or something like that. It's really hard to make it look good. And I found that like my Baldur's Gate 2 video that I made is really popular with people who've played Baldur's Gate 2 but if you haven't, people don't watch it at all. The watch rate is something like 14% of people make it to the end, 12,
Hmm.
13, 14%. So that's one thing I think about is can I make how long is it going to take to actually make it look interesting? You're not worried
Yeah.
about that, or you're not?
Um, I don't know. I don't know how much. This is going to sound really bad, but I also just don't know how much I care that much anymore. Especially being gone for so long, I feel like, um, back when I was making videos the first time around, I really cared um, a lot about how many people watched it and the quality of the graphics and that sort of thing. And
Mm,
I think, um, and like I said, I think this sounds kind of a little like a little jerky, but
no.
a little bit. I'm probably gonna come off like a little bit like a jerk. But I think you have to, and this is something I'm going to get back into making videos. This is something I'm trying to commit to myself. Is I think you have to really make videos for yourself, and if people
Yeah.
enjoy them, that's great. And if they don't, they don't. Because I remember spending, and this is why I think one of the reasons, though there's a lot going on just with life stuff, this is one of the reasons why I think I took such a long hiatus. Is I
Mm,
got to a place where I would just obsess over graphics and After Effects,
mm,
to the point where you would spend, like a day or two. You'd spend like a month researching, a day or two writing, and then weeks just obsessing over getting the graphics and After Effects perfect, which I'm horrible at. And so I don't know.
I
I'm probably
disagree
just gonna.
completely. Your graphics are were some of the best that I'd seen. Um,
Uh,
sorry to, I
Thanks.
don't want to guilt you into having to do it again.
No,
You
no, it's.
do, yeah,
But I'm just gonna cut it together and see what happens.
yeah,
Is my plan.
yeah. It's
There might be
hard to
like a
not let it
graphic or
run
two,
away
but
from you.
I
It's
just.
hard to, it's a slippery slope. It's like, well, I'll just do this and then I'll do this, and if I do that, then I'm gonna do this, and again, and it
Hmm.
just
Hmm.
balloons. Yeah,
Hmm.
but
And yeah, exactly. Then before
and,
you know, you've spent
mm,
the
and I
last
don't.
24 hours.
I don't. Yeah, and I do think like it's not you're completely correct that you make videos for you, and I think a lot of the times like creators obsess about stuff that maybe the audience doesn't care about too much anyway.
Yeah, that's another
Yeah,
big part of it too.
yeah.
Uh, and sometimes I think that obsession actually ends up hurting your videos too, because I remember there was a time when I was obsessing over music in my videos. Like for whatever reason, maybe I saw in someone else's video or I saw something I really liked, and I really felt like good videos had really music played a big part in them, and that's not true at all. And it took me a while to learn that, I think. But in a few of my videos, in the middle there, I think the music is actually really intrusive. And I actually got a lot of feedback that said, "Hey, like I can barely hear you talk. Can you turn your music down next time?"
Yeah, it's hard though because people have so many different audio setups and you don't know. Like if when you listen to it
Yeah,
with good headphones, it's like, yeah, this is great, and then you might play it on your TV and it's like can't hear what you're saying. So yeah,
but I think ultimately, you say you talk, you have an interesting topic. You talk somewhat intelligently about it, both of which are constant challenges of mine.
yeah, me
But
too.
yeah, and I actually think it's something that you do really well is the interesting topic part. And that's what I like about old games, and even like when you were talking about shmups, I always remember your video on was it NetHack,
Mhm.
the follow up to Rogue, I think it is.
Yeah.
But those are games that like no one else is talking about. Like no one, everyone's making videos about like if I everyone's coming out with their Doom Eternal video right now because that just came out, and this Doom and the last Doom are both really well designed games, so everyone's talking about those. But no one's talking about shmups, and that's what's always interested me about your content is that it's about games that no one's playing at
Because
least right
I'm
now. Like
such a nerdy gamer hipster who doesn't play games that
that's
other
cool.
people
That's cool.
like. I
That's your
guess.
thing. That's awesome. That's kind of what excites me about talking about these older computer RPG games. Is no one's talking about how in the very first Final Fantasy game, one of the cool things that I found out is like how much equipment plays versus how much your attributes work, and that stuff's interesting.
I
Um,
think it's really weird because I make like make videos for you. I make videos about what I want, um,
mhm.
topics that interest me, but I don't like you said you like the videos that teach you about games maybe you don't know or you don't play or something. I am the opposite. I realize that
Oh, that's interesting.
it's scumbaggy, but I want to watch
Oh, it's
videos about games that I've played, and I don't know why. Like I like the videos that I make. I'm trying to introduce games to people who maybe haven't played them before and say, "Here's why you should play this game. It's great." It's kind of what I do when I make a video. But when I watch a video, it's like I don't want to do that. I want to watch a video. I want to watch a video about a game I know and I've played, and
no, yeah.
it's a bit
I think
hypocritical.
that's. I definitely feel like some people feel that way,
Mm.
but it's different. One of the challenges I think, and this is changing gears a bit, I think one of the challenges that you come across when you make a video on a game that a lot of other people already examined is even if you have new and interesting thoughts about the video, they're through the lens, even subconsciously or even sometimes consciously, they're always going to be through the lens of what everyone else is saying about that game. Um, and it's tough to and there's certain games that come out that like literally everyone makes a video about. Like I remember when I made my video about Metal Gear Solid 5 because I was really excited to play that game. I really enjoyed playing it, and I was like, oh well, I can talk about this game for like 10 minutes. But it's tough because every other YouTube content creator is making a video about Metal Gear Solid 5, and whether or not you intend to or not, you're going to be thinking about what other people are saying about that game as you're talking about it. And I think that's another really important what's the word I'm looking for. It's a nice side effect of doing older games or games that people aren't currently talking about.
Yeah, you
And
get
for whatever reason, not a whole lot of people talked about Persona 5, and so I was able to kind of just Like I don't think I've seen a single other video on Persona 5 or how it works or anything like that. But uh, yeah,
We're lucky we got you. Um,
uh, uh,
that's.
thanks. But
And I'm glad you're back on YouTube. It's good to watch your stuff again.
well, we'll see how it goes. I am trying to play it a bit more, even more hobbyist than before. But because yeah, you gotta do the things you enjoy, man.
Yeah. Could you turn off your game analyst brain when you're taking the big leave of absence?
No, you just
you never
you just
were
talk
you
to your
still
friends
playing
about it.
games and think I could make a video about that or
Well, my wife plays games with me sometimes, and she always, and she does this. It's with movies too. She always really, and sometimes we'll watch it with my friends who are just as over analytical and nerdy as I am. We'll point things out, and my wife, her name's Steph, would just be like, "Why are you, why are you ruining this for me?"
yeah.
Like every time there's these, Final Fantasy does a really poor job of hiding its load screens. I feel like every 15 minutes, Cloud has to like walk really slowly
Oh.
uh, in between like a wall or creep into something. I'm like, it's the game loading. It's constantly it's loading. And she would never notice had I not said that. But no. So the answer is no. How about you? Are you able to turn off the analytical side of your brain when playing games?
Action games, yeah, I guess so. And I don't it's not until later that I think about it. But like I played Disco Elysium. Um
Oh yeah, how's that? That's on sale right now. I
yeah,
was.
and I realized that it was more me playing it because I wanted to like it. Because it's an intelligent RPG.
Mm-hmm.
Then I played 20 hours of it, and I think it was more me wanting to like it than me actually liking it.
Mm.
Um, like it's a good game. I
It's a
recommend.
glowing. It's a glowing review.
No, it's a review of myself more than the review of the game. It's a it's a very reedy RPG. I really like the characters in it. Um, and I feel like a junkie gamer for saying this, but I realized the reasons I didn't really get into it is because it wasn't rewarding enough. It didn't have enough,
Mm-hmm.
like I would play it for half an hour and sometimes I wouldn't feel like it wouldn't really get anywhere or have done anything. Um, and I kept wanting to like it more than I actually was enjoying it. Like I still look back on it fondly and I still I still want to like it, but I don't think it's a game I'll get back into.
Did you ever play Divinity: Original Sin 2?
Yes, very briefly. But
That
I played it
was
co-op, and so when you play RPGs co-op, it doesn't really you don't get into the story as much.
yeah.
Why
Um,
do you bring it up?
because that game was that for me. I really wanted to like that game, but
Hmm.
and I might come back to it sometime. I've played it for like 10 hours, but it just never clicked with me. Even though it got all these like 10 out of 10s and all these like best game of all time ratings.
Yeah.
But sometimes, and this is just another part of it too. Is sometimes it's just okay for good games not to click with you and just move on. And sometimes it's okay for what games that everyone else thinks is mediocre to click with you too. And you play what you like.
And sometimes you can know it's trash and still love it anyway. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think sometimes people really, really criticize popular games. Sometimes overly so. Like, I'm trying to think of an example. Like, there's tons to Call of Duty is always the perfect example of like games that are like too popular for their own good. But there's still some things you can learn from that game, and I think it's interesting that game video essayists don't ever really touch those more popular, sometimes less sophisticated. I'll admit, but still tons of interesting stuff going on in them.
Well, maybe that's something you could do.
Maybe we'll see. I think
Yeah,
like
that's
an
the other
hour
hypocrite.
5 minutes. So we've officially lulled everyone into sleep.
Okay, well, good night, everyone. Have a
Good
nice
night.
sleep, and we'll see you in the morning. So, what do you
See
reckon?
you.
Another 2 years, and we'll give it another one.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's what 2022. Really, really hoping the world will be in a better place by
Yeah,
then.
it's not like
We didn't really
the,
mention anything, but if you're still listening, stay safe. Um, I don't want to be a downer, but
yeah, no,
definitely
we'll all be good. Everyone be nice and stay apart.
6 feet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. It was
All right.
great talking
Well,
with you. So even if we don't record another one, we should play some games together or chat.
yeah. You still play Destiny 2?
No, the reason I started, the reason I could start making videos and playing other games again was because I finally kicked the habit. So
What about Dark Souls 3? Any interest in doing a playthrough of that?
I've played it through twice, and I think I'm at my limit with that game.
Okay. All right.
Um,
Well, let
Hang
me know what you
on,
think.
what is it? They had the Sekiro. That doesn't actually have co-op, though, does it?
Which one?
Sekiro Shadows Die
Oh, yeah,
Twice.
no, it doesn't.
Oh, okay, so yeah,
Yeah, that is if you haven't played that yet, it's interesting. It's actually definitely a Souls game, but it
mm.
is pretty different than the other ones they've done in a few key ways. Here, I'm gonna look at your library and see what games are common.
Okay, I'm gonna stop recording. Goodbye, everyone.
Oh yeah, I guess I should do that too.